Okay, so starting with chapter 6, can everyone still see my screen now that I'm out of that slideshow? You should see chapter 6 sitting at the top of this Google screen, Google Chrome. Everyone can see that? I am taking your silence as a yes. Oh, there we go, chat. Love it. Okay, so we're going to talk about manipulating strings in this chapter. The way this is going to go for the new people, we actually split up chapter 6 into 2 parts. So to this week, all we're focused on is the reading and making sure that we understood what was basically said in this chapter. Next week, we're going to focus on the practice projects that were at the end. And also this week, we are going to go over some practice questions to sort of wrap everything up. And Angelica has volunteered to help us out with that. And she has all of our answers ready to go so that we can discuss that a little towards the end. So that's basically how we're going to take the next couple of hours today. But let's go ahead and get started. We're just going to go through basically all the sections in chapter 6, and you can pipe in, ask questions, say what you appreciated about the chapter, or say something that confused you, and we're going to try it out on the screen so that you can see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and jump into chapter 6 with manipulating strings. If you are not already aware, this is a book that you can get physically available, like you can have the book in front of you, or you can go on the website. So if you notice, I'm on a website called automatetheboringstuff.com, specifically on chapter 6, and it has all of the text that's in the actual physical book. So we're going to go over all of that and the code that's with it. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here. We're talking about strings, and we have been using strings over the last few weeks, tons and tons. But we get into a lot of nitty-gritty stuff with working with strings this week. So specifically, there were these things called string literals. We were actually able to literally say, this is the string that I want you to use. And strings typically start with a single quote at the beginning and at the end. But we don't necessarily have to have the single quotes. Does anyone remember why we use double quotes when we're trying to declare strings? Why would we use double quotes instead of single quotes?
Because there's also an apostrophe, I guess. That's like Alice's cat right there. It's easy to actually get that wrong if you're opening and closing the string with just single quotes.
Right. Because I guess Python is looking at that single quote, and it's treating that, right, as the beginning of the string and the end of the string. But if you don't want it to be treated like that, you specifically want it to be used as an apostrophe, basically a part of the string, you can alternate. Instead of starting with a single quote, you'll start with a double quote instead. So that's basically just holding down the shift key and pressing the same key that gives you the apostrophe. So that's one of the reasons why we use our double quotes. Do you remember this escape character section? What's the point of using our escape characters? And if you look right here, here's an example of escape characters being used if you need a reminder. Why do we use escape characters?
So an escape character, oh sorry.
No, go for it, go for it.
Okay, so an escape character is used to provide, to give the character its literal meaning in the string rather than its interpreted meaning, as in the single quote is retained instead of interpreting it as the end of the string.
Right. So to go back to sort of what Kevin was mentioning earlier, right? We were using our double quotes so that we were able to use that apostrophe in the middle. Well, what we could have done also is in this case, we still use our single quotes on the outside, but just like Pooja mentioned, we use the escape character, which is just basically the backslash with that apostrophe, and it won't treat it like it's the end of the string. It'll treat it like the apostrophe we want it to be. So this is a list of some of those escape characters that are in action, the single quote, double quote, tabs, new lines, and backslash. If you ever want to use those, escaping them is a real nice, safe way to do that. And here's like a great example of how that actually works in action. If you see here, we're trying to say, hello there, how are you? I'm doing fine. But when we do that, we use a lot of special things. So we have a new line character here that's escaped. That basically means we just want a line break between hello there and how are you. And then we do it again here. And then you see here, we're trying to throw an apostrophe on there. And so now when we actually write this code, it's going to print out on three separate lines. So that new line got converted to a line break, new line character got converted to a line break, and there's our little apostrophe actually being used instead of it being sort of the delimitation, the end of the string represented there. What you probably also notice about the string is it starts with your double quotes. In this particular case, instead of starting with single quotes, he decided to use starting with double quotes. So either one could have been used. You just have to be careful how you use them internally. Any questions about that before I move on into the next section? Escaping characters, single quotes or double quotes? Okay, so then raw strings. This is something I personally have never heard of before, so it was nice to actually see this in action. A raw string is sort of like another way of, how do I put this? So if I want to literally write backslash apostrophe S, if you put this R right at the beginning of your string, so before that single quote there, you'll notice that it will print out literally that backslash and the apostrophe, also known as the raw version of this string. So it's basically just, I sort of think of it like it's escaping the escape character. All the escape characters that you might have used are just translated right back into what it actually is. So that's interesting. Has anyone actually used a raw string before? Like in action?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. What do you use it mostly for? When do you
I use it primarily for managing Windows paths, because what's going to happen is if you use a backslash when you put the Windows path, so it's like C user, my name, and then the directory that I go to. If I copy and paste it there, I have to put backslash after backslash after backslash after each one.
Mm-hmm.
But to avoid that mess, I just put I make it as a raw string, so that I don't have to use that. I don't have to keep monitoring which backslash is going to where. I also use the raw string if I use the the regex module, so that if I want to do a search that uses a backslash, then I can just use it as a raw string.
Oh, cool. Now, if I remember correctly, you're trying to study up on your regex, right? I thought I saw something in Slack about that.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Did you find any resources to help you out there?
I found a couple. A lot of them were actually using regex on JavaScript, but it's mostly a lot of trial and error, and sometimes the specific question you want kind of goes down a different rabbit hole, so I only limit myself to using regex unless I really need it.
Mm. Well, that sounds like a great topic for us to actually cover like in depth one day, is just regex stuff, and like really study it pretty hard, because I know it can be extremely powerful.
Very true.
Okay, So making a note to self. Okay. Let's jump into multi-line strings with triple quotes, unless anyone had any questions over the stuff that we did up above. And oh, as a reminder, I'm sorry, I have to remind myself too to keep an eye on the chat. If you, for whatever reason, are on mute or you can't speak, but you do want to contribute, there is a chat feature in Zoom. If you, I think, either go to the top or the bottom of your screen, you should see a little button for chat, and you're welcome to answer questions over there, and I'll try to keep an eye on that to monitor. Okay, so multi-line strings with triple quotes. So using the why would you use triple quotes? Or when you were reading this, how did you understand triple quotes could be used for?
I thought I heard somebody trying to say something. It was.
I don't see anything yet. But I liked it personally when I saw it actually being used. If you notice here in this example, if you were to just straight up write this quote, this code necessarily without these triple quotes, you're not going to get all of the new line breaking, the line breaking that you would expect exactly the way you want it. So if you use your triple quotes, it's going to retain all of the quotes, the tabs, and the new lines exactly the way you wrote it and print it back to the screen just like that. So in this particular case, the person wanted to make sure that there was some space between Dear Alice and the Eves line, another new break between Eves and Sincerely, and then it breaks again to Bob. It's not going to be sitting on top of each other and all of the white space stripped out. So triple quotes really helps with that. So you can either write it like this, or you could write it like this. I don't find this particularly, what's the word, user-friendly to read, but I'm sure that it has its advantages just because it's more compressed, probably like a smaller file size or something like that. I'm not sure if anyone has already had experience with Python, if they find an advantage of using triple quotes over using the escape characters. Does anyone like one over the other?
I've used the escape character as a variable, so I put the escape character as a variable, and if I need to insert it, then that's what I do sometimes. But I rarely use it just to print out a string to look like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, because it's just not as readable. If somebody looks at my code and they see this, it's like, okay, I gotta add some more mental bandwidth to process what is he trying to do, or he or she is trying to do.
So do you end up actually using it this way? Or is there like some other secret function out there?
And I'll be frank. I use the escape characters more often than the triple quotes, because personally for me, if I see triple quotes, the first thing that comes to my mind is that it's either a comment that it's basically like a multi-line comment. So I might, in my head, if I'm too sleepy, I'll disregard where it says print and say, oh, it's a comment. It's like, why is my comment being printed out now?
Okay, I see. Now that's interesting that you should say that. So wait, before I go down my path, just so you know, Pooja just mentioned, I mostly use triple quoted strings as doc strings to explain functions or methods of a class.
Bingo, yes.
Thank you, Pooja, for adding that to our commentary. Now, so you were just mentioning that you use single quotes triple single quotes, or your brain sort of just jumps to it being a multi-line comment. Now, what I'm seeing here is that a multi-line comment is triple double quotes, or is there a difference? Triple double quotes versus triple single quotes, are those interchangeable comments?
I think I've used both interchangeably. Let me give that a shot real quick.
I completely forgot. I have a Python tutor to actually try that out.
Sweet.
And if you are new, we are using a website called pythontutor.com that just lets us visualize what we're doing. Okay, so here it's using single quotes, and it looks like it's treating it like a comment. Just make sure there's no error with that. Yep. And then triple double quote. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. So it looks like triple single quote or triple double quote when it comes to your, sorry, going too fast. Whether it's triple double quote or triple single quote is still a multi-line comment either way. So that's sort of why you're saying you don't necessarily like using this, because that can become confusing. You think it's a comment rather than actually being used to delineate a string inside of an in-print statement.
Correct. And usually I don't print this kind of format where it's like 3 different lines. I try to keep it as possible.
And sometimes it probably also just depends on the use case, right? Of like,
very true, yes.
What you're trying to do. Like your work might not necessarily need this printed off in the screen in this way. But okay, good to keep in mind. Let's go on to this next section called multi-line comments. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to stop me or interrupt. I will keep going if you don't interrupt me. Okay, so here's an example of the multi-line comments once again in the actual book. You'll notice that he's using triple quotes, but we just showed that we can do it with triple or single quotes, either one, at least in Python 3. Okay, so we're going to jump into indexing and slicing strings. So do you remember why we slice strings to begin with? What's the point of slicing a string? What do we do with it? Anybody want to answer that? So slicing a string, well, I think I'll talk about before we start slicing a string, let's talk about indexing a string. So if you look here, here's an example of a string, hello world, just written all out with our single quotes at the beginning and at the end. But when we actually want to reference specific portions of this string, we use something called an index. And so our index is really just saying, identifying the location of certain characters or portions of the string using that particular value. So if I wanted to say, like, where is world in this, it's between index 6 and 11. So if you notice here, there's world between indexes 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. When it comes to ranges, when we're slicing strings, we actually state the very last position that the slice is not in or not a part of. So if we actually were trying to find just the world portion of this, we would say that it starts at index 6 and then it ends at index 11, not including index 11. It's sort of weird, I find it weird at least, to actually say the thing that you don't want to include, but that is the way it is done here. So if you notice here, these are some sort of like really interesting examples of how you can access portions of the string. So here is at index 0, you say what your string is. In this particular case, we put the string and we assign it to a variable called spam. So for this string, at index 0, we have the letter H. Pretty simple. And then you just count over 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 to identify other portions of that particular string. So who remembers what a -1 means when you're trying to index a string? What does -1 mean?
You're going backwards, at least one.
Yeah, I just sort of think -1, it's the very last thing, and then you just move your way from right to left. So perfect. In this particular case, -1 refers to the very last thing in here, which is this exclamation point. The very first question I had in my head was, why would I use -1 instead of saying index 11? There is value in saying -1. What is that?
Because sometimes you just don't know what the range is, and you just want to know what's in the very bottom, in the very end. It could be, the range could be 5 million, could be 1, it could be 500 million, and you just don't want to type 500 million on, on there. So I just, I just take the last one. I just need -1.
Exactly. Yeah. It just allows you don't have to keep track. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, it just works its way backwards at that point, just like you were saying. So if I said -2, it's just saying the D in this particular case. So if you move from that opposite direction, you're looking at the second thing from the end.
Correct.
And then you can just increase going from left to right if that's your intention. Now, these items here, the ones that have the colons in them, I like to think of those like substrings, where basically, once again, these are all sort of slices of the overall string that you have. So when you're saying from 0 to 5, you're saying we're going to start at position 0, and I want you to give me everything up to, but not including position 5. So if you notice here, position 5 is this space. And so if you look at what it returned, it doesn't return you that space. So it includes everything up to, but not including the very last index that it's mentioned. This one here, that one's just referring to basically everything up to position 5. Once again, up to, but not including position 5. And then you can go in the opposite direction as well. You can say start at 6 and just go to the end. I don't know where, I don't know how far it is, but just give me everything to the end. So we've done this a little bit before in our previous chapters, but just a really solid reminder here of the way that you can access that information. So that's real helpful. Does anyone have any questions about slicing or being able to access the portions of the string that they need to access?
Yeah, I do have one.
Go for it.
I am not very much familiar with Python, but do we have a string length, something like that in Python to check with?
Yes, .len. You're basically asking like, how long is the string? And you just want a value returned?
Actually, my question is regarding the negative index. I'm not very much, is it like, can't we find with a string length and go with the last index that way? Why is it you need to use a negative index instead? That's my question.
Oh,
why can't you use a string length and get with the last index? And
I don't think anything's preventing you from doing that.
Okay, how specific is it using a negative index rather than that way?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that would stop you from doing that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's just a matter of preference.
Yeah, there should be something peculiar using a negative index. So what might be the difference of using both of?
That is a great question. We can definitely look that up, and then we can post that in our Slack channel, the answer to that. Why using -1 might be an advantage over using the dot length option. So for example, okay, sorry, just making sure I did that right. Okay, can I print?
Example dog.
I can't remember actually how to do this.
I think it's so it's len, and then you put the string in the middle. I think inside the parenthesis.
This way we do
I haven't
it in
used it in a
Java.
while.
len,
len, yep.
and then example.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And then yep, try that.
But wouldn't this give us? This would give us how long example is.
Yes.
We want to get the value that's at the
So example of length of example.
right.
So okay, I see where this is going. So instead of on line 7,
Yep.
Instead of put the len example, put that in a variable, and then then we can print that variable.
That's
so
more.
Yep.
Wait, you're saying put it in the variable?
Put it in a variable. Don't a different variable. Let's say put it as a, for example. Yep, or just variable works. And then remove the print statement from that line. Yep. And then yep, on line, let's do on line 9. You can do print variable just to see what the length of that example is. And then I think what Aruna is referring to is she wants exactly. So you print, and then you under variable next to it, you put in a bracket, open and closing bracket, and then whatever the variable length is of that. I think I'm losing my head here.
I think this is what you're thinking of.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Because the length of example will give us it's this long, and then we take whatever that value is and put it inside, and print that out. Cross our fingers, see how we do. What did I do wrong?
Oh, because remember, it goes. We have to do it one number behind. -1.
There you go.
So it's variable -1.
There we go. Same value. So it's not hurting anything to use either one.
I guess somebody might have said, like, instead of doing variable -1, I just put in -1.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think that makes sense too.
Yes.
Let me throw a wrench in this. So
of course.
So you saw in the book it shows -1 by itself, right?
Yes.
What happens if you put it on with a colon?
So it should. Okay, my gut is that it should return everything up into the very last value, but not including. Maybe.
Give it a shot.
So that's what you're referring to, colon -1?
Yep.
This is a string, and ugh.
Not the last.
So once again, up to but not including that very last thing. I remember seeing an example like sentence reverses the string bound to sentence variable.
Now, if you put the -1 in the front,
In the front? Okay. Like that.
yep.
Just the G.
Oh,
Because
it's
it's
just the
starting
G.
at the end.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
I think to get it to reverse, you need the 2 colons, but I think that's later down the chapter.
And that's what Pooja's referring to. It's reversing it. Okay.
Exactly.
So if I do that, come back. But she's saying let's do it at the front of it. Yep. That's fun. Just watch out what you write there, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. This is a common question for like some coding puzzles. Like, is this an anagram? And so to do that, you got to reverse the string, right? So you got to put this in a variable and then compare it with the original string. And if they both match, then hence it's an anagram. Or not anagram,
That's
but
cool.
what do you call it? The taco cat?
A palindrome?
That's what it was. Sorry, it was a palindrome.
Okay. Cool. Love learning new stuff. Thank you, Pooja. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. So does anyone have any other questions before we jump into in and out? Does anyone want to play any more with slices and stuff? Okay. So in and out, I don't know why I said in and out. I think I have hamburgers on the brain. I meant in and not in. So this is just basically seeing, is this string that I have, it's comparing, is the string actually in this other string that I have? So it's asking, is hello inside of hello world? And sure enough, it returns value of true. Just to remember though, that strings are case sensitive. So something like hello, all caps, is not the same as this substring that we have here of hello with 1 capital letter at the beginning. What I found interesting was this line. So am I saying this right? Because what I'm reading here is empty string inside of spam, and it's telling me yes, it is. Is that right?
I think that's what that is, yeah.
Okay. Sure. Is nothing inside of spam. That feels very philosophical for me. I'm not entirely sure why you might want to look for that, but I can understand looking like for a space or something, but okay.
I think of it as it's a potential gotcha. So like if you're trying to compare, hey, is there nothing in here? It'll come back as true, and then your code will still run, and it's like, why is it running? There is something, but it detects nothing.
Okay. Okay. Perhaps it's equivalent to set theory, where an empty set is a subset of a given set. Oh, okay.
That is interesting.
Wow. This gets really deep. I thought it was all so simple, but no. It has some very strong implications down the line. But that's good to know. So that's it. That's not in, how we actually use it. Now we get to some really powerful methods. Does anyone have any questions before we jump into there? Oh, okay. Thank you, Pooja. Similarly, empty string is a substring of a given string. That's just the way that works. Okay. Okay, so this fun section about upper and lower is lower. This is basically allowing you to take a string and make it all uppercase. So we come in with hello world, where it's really just sentence case, basic sentence case. The first letter is capitalized, but none of the others are. But we can actually make it all capitalized if we wanted to by using the dot upper method. Or we can use our dot lower method, which does the reverse. sending it to hello_world. Now, I think here's an example of some code that actually uses it in action. But again, just in case you haven't read that, why would you want to use upper and lower other than just I want to make it all capital or lowercase? Like, what is like the value of that in programming in general? Just throwing that out there to the group. Why would you want to set everything to upper and all lower? I feel like it's a very important QA thing, in my opinion.
You're just waiting. I'm waiting for other people to jump in before I say anything.
At least that's the only thing that immediately comes to my mind, I guess.
Yes and no. Well, like of course, QA is basically a little bit of everything. But so the value that I see in here is, let's say, for example, we ask for an input for the user. Say, please put in your name. And then what happens is in the database, we store it as all lowercase letters. What happens is the user, without having any additional instructions, they put everything in all caps because they want to see the nice, pretty letters in their name. If we don't do any additional formatting to the string that they pass, and our program looks at it, it's like, oh, we don't recognize you. You must be a new person. Hello, all these person with with all caps. So in order for us to detect that it's the same user, we have to put them on all lowercase. I typically use .lower to compare strings, so that if even I personally make some mistake, like I'll put one letter capital by accident, but if I want to compare two strings, if they're essentially the same two strings, but the one letter is capital or not, I just put them both to .lower as a preference.
I feel like I've seen that used a lot, is just using the .lower rather than the .upper. Just at least for this particular purpose, I was just wondering, is that like an industry standard, or it just so happens I've seen more of those?
I think Pooja had a very good point, actually.
So it said, she's saying, when the case of the user input is irrelevant, so similar to what you were mentioning, especially in yes or no prompts, like those seen in Linux command terminal prompts while installing or updating applications where capital yes and lowercase yes are the same. So awesome. We're all in agreement then, I think. Essentially, it boils down to use this case sensitivity does not matter. It's the content of what you're saying rather than whether or not it's capital or lower. So if you actually see this here, this example, that's what he's essentially doing in this section. He's asking the user, how are you taking in the input? And this is an example of when you don't tell them, capitalize it, lowercase it, or anything like that. So if the person comes in and is bringing in a value, so whatever that input comes in, it's going to be assigned a feeling. We're going to take whatever that value is and lowercase it and compare it to the word great, also in lowercase. That way, it does not matter if they wrote it in these 3 different ways, it's still going to be lowercase. So we can just say, if they said it was great, then print this. Otherwise, print something different. So that's an example. If you actually want to play with it in the code, they have that in the book. Of why people use that actively, of using upper and lower. Cool. So there are 2 other ones that we didn't mention. Oh, you can uppercase everything, you can lowercase everything, but then there's also is upper or is lower. So essentially, that is asking the question, is this uppercase? Is this lowercase? So here we have this word hello world. Is lower is going to return false. And is upper is going to return false because there's at least one uppercase letter in here, or there's at least one lowercase letter. So it's not totally lowercase, but it's also not totally uppercase. So here's an example of where it actually will return true. You have to have every single letter match, and then it will return a value of true or false. Now this one's interesting. Is it purposely, and I guess we can look this up in the docs and post it into Slack later. So this one, it's only comparing the alpha values of this string and determining whether or not it's lower. That's what that looks like to me.
Yeah, same. It looks like it's just ignoring the numbers.
Okay.
Although I wonder what it would look like if you put in a blank string and said is lower.
Here, let us try that out and see. What am I printing? Okay, so we're asking if it is lower, and you're saying just putting in a blank string, not an empty string.
Yeah, like a blank string.
Blank string. Okay. It returns a false. ABC. This should return true, just to make sure I wrote it right. Okay, good. So if it just does 1, 2, 3, 4, what will it do? Okay, so there is no, if it doesn't find any alphanumeric characters, it still doesn't like it. Or no, alpha characters, excuse me.
What about you put in a smiley face? Sorry, QA senses things.
False. No dice.
Yeah. So it has to be just plain alphabet.
Okay. So that's our is lower and is upper section. I keep writing it as supper though. I guess I'm hungry. Once again, food on the brain. This is interesting. You can actually chain a number of method calls together. So you can take this, send it, you can make it all uppercase first and then send it all to the lowercase value. I'm trying to think, why would you do this? Like practically. Why?
I can't think of anything, no.
Like, because it's to me, and obviously I'm definitely could be wrong. It just seems like it's doing the last thing in the list.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Like it's always either just going to be all upper or all lower. Like, why would you do anything else? Okay, but you can if you wanted to. If you want to have fun with that, just know that it's possible. Okay, before we jump into the is X strings, did anyone have any questions?
I want to. Oh yeah, let's also take a look at the chat. Just want to also inject something. So there's, aside from is upper, is lower, or lower upper, I think there's also capitalize. I don't think the book covers that.
Ooh, okay. So do we have to import anything?
No. So basically put in a string, a regular string, like. Yep.
Okay.
And put the T as a lowercase on the very front. Yep. And put that capitalize. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it uses uppercase.
Mm-hmm.
So in uppercase, the first word becomes uppercase, and then everything else is lowercase.
Yeah, so I use this like if I'm putting in like a name, or an address, I make sure that the first letter is capitalized for first name, last name, rather than just I'm gonna slice the first string and do dot capitalize or is upper. So this kind of takes that away.
Now, is there a camel case version?
I don't think I've seen one. There might be one, but I'm not aware of this one. No, for camel case version, no.
And in case you're not sure what that means, anyone else listening, camel case, every word, at the beginning of every word is capitalized. So every time that you see a space, the next word is capitalized. Well, I'll look that up and see what we got for that. But thank you for the addition. Any other fun facts people have about this section? Or fun method calls we could use? Because if not, there are tons more to choose from. A lot of these, though, are more comparison rather than actually converting anything. So you can determine if there are any alpha characters inside with this particular string, if there's any alphanumeric. So notice these are different, right? So alpha characters, that's just basically A through Z, while alphanumeric, A through Z, 1 through 0, 0 through 9, included in that. And it'll return true if that's the case. You also have anything that is decimal that's showing numeric characters. Is there a space or is there title? Now title, I'm trying to remember what this one is. Oh, so this is capitalized. Consists only of words that begin with an uppercase letter followed by only lowercase words. This is title case. This is title case. This is not title case. Oh, so this is the camel case I was referring to.
I thought camel case is the first letter is not. Oh well, I could be wrong.
Wait, no. What were you thinking?
Because my understanding of camel case is the first letter or the first letter of the word is not capital, but the rest are capital.
Oh, well.
Yeah, my understanding of if it's everything is capital on the first word, and that's Pascal case, I believe.
Did you say Pascal?
Pascal case, yes.
Oh, cool. Yep, I just totally in my head. So it's like iPhone or camel case is the practice of writing phrases such that each word or abbreviation in the middle of the phrase begins with a capital letter.
iPhone is actually a good way to remember it.
iPhone, iPad, so the first letter is lowercase and then the next one is upper. Okay. So then then I'm back to the question of, can I convert it to title case? So I assume that there's probably something out there. I will look that up and see and throw that into the Slack as well. Because if you're checking for it, I wonder if you can actually convert it to it as well. This is title case. This is title case. And I just realized my screen might look really weird to y'all. So hold on a second. Let's go back to okay. So that is our fun. Title case is decimal, is space. You can play around with these and have quite a lot of fun with those. And it looks like you're primarily using these in order to, well, the example, at least in the book, is showing you that you can use these if you're trying to confirm people are putting in the information or doing user validation. So in this case, you're asking for an age, but if someone puts in a whole string of letters, then we have a bit of a problem. So if it is a decimal and it's true, then we're good. But if it's not, then it's going to go back and say, please enter your age. because it's assessing, is this a decimal? So using those string methods are very helpful for user validation. And so I would highly recommend playing with these particular ones. If you want to actually just use it in action, just try these out in your shell terminal. A couple of other methods that we have going on: string.title converts the first letter for each word in a string. Ooh, okay. Thank you, Kevin. Let's see that. Sorry, I am easily distracted by chats. So, so we have this as a string. If we use the .title, that's what I was looking for, where you capitalize the beginning of each word. So there's another fun one to know. Type title. Okay. The next string methods that you have available to you are starts with and ends with. So this allows you to sort of just take your string and you say, does this string that I'm giving you right here, is that at the beginning of this string or is it at the end of the string? So you use obviously the one that you're looking for. Does this sentence start with hello, or does this sentence end with world? And so you can use that in a lot of fun ways. This is really helpful if you don't want to have to use the equal to operator, because the equal to operator is basically making sure that you're comparing everything in the string. Is everything in the string equal to everything in that string? Yes or no? But this case here, all of these options you don't have to worry about everything, just talk about the portion either at the beginning of it or at the end of it. So you might find that very helpful to use in action. Any questions or commentary about that before I move into joining and splitting? Okay, so joining and splitting, this is actually really fun. So what you're essentially doing is you're providing a list and you're saying, for this list of things that I have, what do I want to put in the middle between this entire list and make it and bring this all together in one string. So if you notice here, what they're doing is they're saying, I want you to take this little string here and I want you to join it with this list of things. And you can tell that this is a list because it starts with the little square brackets on the outside. So it's going to take the string cats, and then it's going to put this comma with this followed by a space, and join it with the string rats, and then the comma and the space, and then join it with the string bats. And so now you have one whole string that says cats, rats, and bats. Bye, Angelica. The next part is, sorry, I got off track there. So you have your commas, you also can have your spaces, or you can even just concatenate a series of letters, which is a little bit awkward. I'm not entirely sure when you might do this, when you might actually put letters and try to inject them in a list. The thing I can think of, I think, might be if you were trying to say this and this and this and this, if you just wanted to keep putting and in the middle, that might be a reason to do it. Actually, in action though, from a programmatic perspective, does anyone have ideas of why they have used that before?
For join?
Yep, in a more professional setting, yeah. Like, what would you put at the beginning of that join?
So if I could see it, I would not put something like ABC. But let's say, for example, I managed to pull data from 3 different sources. Say, for example, like in my work, we test mobile devices. So I will pull the name of the device. Let's say the name of the device is, let's say, LG, right? And then the other thing that I'm also pulling is the date. So let's say the date is, what's today's date? 09/12/2019. And then the third thing that I pull is, what exactly am I pulling? So it's a logcat. I'm not going to get into what a logcat is. Or let's say this time I want to say it's let's say it's a logcat. It's basically the log that comes out if you plug your phone into your computer. And it's the thing that goes in the background and tells the user, this is everything that the user is currently doing.
Right.
So let's say I want to put that all into one string, and that will be the title of the file. I'm putting all the logs into this title. So I would do something like, I would put an underscore instead. So I'd do underscore, like, for example, underscore dot join, and then LG, then the date, because we want that as a string. And then let's say also logcat. So something like this. Yep. And the logcat, I think, is missing one. Yep. There you
go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me comment.
I would also I guess on the very end of logcat, I'll put in let's leave it at that for now.
Yeah. So, but it's essentially you're throwing your underscore in the middle in order to complete a file name.
Yes.
Oh, what did I break? Oh, I didn't actually print it to the screen. That's what I did.
Yeah, we can put that in a variable, just put in, yep, or you can do that too. There you go.
So you're making nice and easy, fun file names. Okay, I like it.
Yep.
Okay, so that's joining things together. If we were actually trying to split them apart, we can go in the opposite direction. So we take a particular string and say, nope, split it down the middle. And by default, it's going to do it every time that it encounters white space. But it doesn't have to be then. It could be actually split it every time that you encounter this series of characters. Or in Kevin's case, we can, I guess, put a underscore there. So every time it encounters underscore, it would split it out. So then we would break out the LG. Let's see. Just winging that here. I should probably go in the opposite direction though. That's not real, but that's okay. And so what we're doing is we're splitting this every time that we encounter the underscore. I think.
That looks right.
And there we go. We have a list broken every time they saw the underscore. So we have join and we have split. So fun stuff going on there. Then we also have our just, left just, and center. So basically it's just right justify your text and include 10 characters worth of white space or 20 characters worth of white space, so on and so forth, either on the right or the left. So it'll right justify the text and then just pad it with 10 characters of space to the left-hand side of it. By itself, it seems pretty boring, but what I really liked was actually running this little piece of code to actually see what happens, like why people actually use this in real life. Because when you run that code, it actually breaks it down to something like this. So you'll notice that what they've done is they've taken a dictionary right here. Here's our dictionary. And remember, dictionaries have keys and values. So we have our sandwiches, our apples, our cups, and our cookies, followed by however many of those things there are. And so everything on the left, all the keys are going to be left justified here. And they're going to be padded with, instead of spaces, they've decided to pad it with periods. And then everything on the right-hand side will be right justified. All the values will be right justified. And in this case, since we don't have the periods, we just have spaces, then it's all just moved over to the words are moved to the right, and you just have spaces on the left-hand side. So that's what you actually see in action here, is the keys on the left padded with the periods, and then you have the numbers on the right padded with a space. So I actually liked seeing that in action. That was pretty spiffy. After that, it looks like that we have a little bit of white space going on. If you have that extra white space, we can strip that out. And then remember, we had this discussion, I think about like 3 weeks ago, where we were trying to figure out a better way of doing what they wanted us to do in the book. So you have the ability to use either strip, which will remove all white space, or you can just focus either on the right-hand side of the information or the left-hand side of the information and just strip out that extra space. Now, this was weird, or I found the example weird. I'm not sure if anyone's actually used this in action. Essentially what you're saying is, I want you to strip out these characters, either the A, the M, the P, or the S, and strip them out as many times as you possibly can until I think you encounter the very first thing that's not in this list. That's what it seems like it's doing to me, because it doesn't care about the order or anything like that. It's just keep stripping these on the left or the right until you encounter something that's not in the list. And that's how you get from this down to just bacon, spam, and eggs. So stripping out those extra characters. What's the reason, I guess, in actuality, why you would use this? Does anyone?
Trying to strip apart up a string?
Yeah. But based off like specific characters, not just white space.
I think what this is trying to do is remove, because I don't see where eggs would show up, actually. If I go
you have
through
eggs
this.
here.
Yep.
So it took off the AMPS on the ends.
But it's my cat. But wouldn't that at least leave so all of the, well, no, that would not make any sense for me. I guess I'm coming a little blah right now. Oh, wait. Yeah, I see now.
It's just, it's not like, at first I thought it was like literally A and PS, but it's not. It's any A, any M, any P, any S at the beginning of this string.
So the only practicality that I could see in this is if let's say you were going to print something, and what ends up happening is, like, if I put, sorry, it's my cat. Let's say I have an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, and I connect it to my tablet or my laptop, and what ends up happening is, if I take the serial port from it, it'll always start with the /B. It's like, I don't want to see the /B, so I guess I could use it as .strip/B and put a raw string.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. Also probably removing of file extensions. Okay.
That's a good point.
Huh. Well, that is the last random piece of information that we have here. I'm not entirely sure what he did here at the end. He just sort of like added this thing that we don't actually use. So we just sort of played with this paperclip module that doesn't, If you want to play with this, this is fine. I'm not sure. I haven't read the project yet, but I don't think it's going to come up. Basically, what you're doing is you're copying and pasting things outside of your terminal, and it just keeps track of what's in your clipboard. So if you want to play with that, there is a paperclip module that you can install, but it doesn't come with Python. You have to install it. So check out the Appendix A if you want to play with that a little bit. But next week, we're going to start playing with these two projects, which is called the Password Locker and where's that other one? Adding bullets to the wiki markup. So we're going to just basically go back over chapter 6 from this perspective, just focusing on the code and playing with it and seeing what happens. So basically, it's like homework week. Just go back and see if you can make your code do what it's asking you to do in here. And we'll do a review of chapter 6 with these questions that are down here just to get us started for part 2. But that's, I think, what we're going to do for this upcoming week. Does anyone have any questions before we sign off for today?
I'm good.
Well, thank you guys so much. Aruna, thank you for joining us. Oh, I'm so glad that you liked it. Then we will definitely see you back here, same time next week, and we'll go over the actual coding projects. Bye.
Let us know if you get stuck also on the Slack channel.
Yes, great mention. Feel free to mention that at any time throughout the week. People are going to be looking in there and they can help out. Ooh.
Thank you again.
Yeah, no worries.
This has been a great session.
Share the invite link to the Slack channel. Crap.